folks, and welcome to another helping of Mr H's Hot Pot. Today we're back at Haigh Woodland Park, which is in Wigan, traditionally Lancashire. It was in Lancashire, Wigan, up until 1974 when they restructured all the boundaries. And like many other Wiganers, I'll never accept that we're now part of Greater Manchester. Anyway, this 250 acre woodland that's behind me and the hall that lays within it was originally the home of the Earl of Balcarres stroke Earl of Crawford, depending which name you want to know him by. It was owned by the Lindsay family right up until 1947, when the family sold it to then Wigan Corporation for £18,000. Wigan Corporation later became Wigan Council, which we all know it by today. Now, back in the 70s and early 80s, a number of attractions was added to this park by Wigan Corporation / Wigan Council in a bid to bring the public through the gates to visit it, because one of the conditions of the sale of the hall and the woodlands was that the people of Wigan would be able to enjoy it forevermore, which is what we're actually doing today. Now, some of those attractions are still here, surprisingly enough, today and still in operation, but one or two of them have fallen by the wayside down the years and are now lost attractions. So what I'm going to do, Hot Potters, in this little series of videos is take a look at each one of those attractions individually, take a closer look and talk about some of the history of it. So why not join me as we turn back the pages of time and step back through history to when this woodland park was known as Haigh Country Park, which is the name that I and many other Wiganers will recognise. So, without further ado, let's take a look at one of those attractions now, shall we? So today, Haigh Woodland Park is known for high thrill adventure, such as these zip wires here behind me. Just look at that. A few years younger Mrs H, I'd have fancied to go on that myself. Now I'll let you into a little secret here, Hot Potters. Mrs H is actually brave, that, haven't you?
Yeah, just the lower one though.
Yeah, you brought a class down, didn't you?
I did.
And the whole idea of these sort of zip wires and climbing facilities is to get children used to outdoor pursuits. But did you know, Mrs H, that this isn't the original one?
No, I didn't. I thought this was the only one here.
Well, back in the days of Haigh Country Park, Wigan Council invested money in a little natural enclave, ominously known as Devil's Canyon, and it had these sort of facilities in it. Now today, that lies sort of semi-abandoned, but we're going to take a little look at it. But to find it, we've got to go right into the bowels of Haigh Hall Woods, or the plantations as it's known locally. So, I think, Mrs H, that's what we'll do now. We need to leave the safety and sanctuary of this part of the park, and like I said, it's in a remote part of the woods. So, join me again when we reconvene and we'll take a look at the original adventure type of facility that was here at Haigh Country Park. Okay folks, welcome back. We're now about 1.5 miles away to 2 miles away from where we last spoke, and we've made it to the ominously sounding Devil's Canyon, which is marked by this boulder stone here. As you can see, someone's engraved in Devil's Canyon. All moss covered these days, and it looks like something out of a Hammer House horror film, doesn't it, Mrs H?
It does.
Now, the facility that we've come to have a look at is just down this path here behind me. But as we make our way to it, I'll sort of talk about what little bit of history I know about it. Now, unfortunately, there's not really a lot on the internet about this area. It's rather sparse. But what little bit I have found out is that originally this was a quarry back in the days when this was a private estate. And the rock that was taken out of here was used in various projects around the Haigh Hall estate. Most notably, if ever you're up at Haigh Hall in the future, take a little look around the edge of the walls and you'll notice big flagstones. Some of those was quarried here at this little quarry, which is known as the receptacle for some reason. Now, after Haigh Hall estate was sold off in 1947, Wigan Corporation / Wigan Council just left this as a natural beauty spot, especially with it being in such a remote location. I mean, we're right in the bowels of Haigh Woodland here, or Lower Plantations as it's known as. And those that have ventured beyond those gates, in the days before these gates was placed here, state that in those walls there's some excellent examples of pareidolia. Now those of you who don't know what pareidolia is, it's that phenomenon where you see faces in random shapes. And there's supposed to be some very good ones in there, depending at which angle you're at. Now that they've put like little man-made handholds in and footholds in to make it into a climbing wall, you can't see them unfortunately these days. Probably ruined the effect a little bit. So it's a little bit like Wigan's own Mount Rushmore, that, Mrs H.
Is it?
Yeah. Now when all these bits and pieces was put in here, you know, there's one on the outside here, there's some poles here. When all this equipment was placed here, I don't know, but looking at it, it looks to me like it dates from about the 2000s onwards. It was probably a Millennium project, Mrs H.
Yeah, some lottery funding maybe.
Yeah, maybe, you know, something like that. And they invited not only the public to come and climb this wall, but school children as well. From ages 8 upwards you could have climbed that, Mrs H. With supervision, of course. Now, unfortunately, this area was the scene of a serious accident back in late March of 2012. A 27-year-old man who was climbing that wall, unfortunately, he fell off and he sustained serious injuries. Enough to have him ambulanced out of this area. And his companion, who was 20 years old, ended up being frozen to that rock face. If you just pan over there again, Mrs H. He was stuck up there, and I think it's known as being crag fast, that, if you get stuck on a face wall through fear. So they had to get Bolton Mountain Rescue in to come down and get the... Well, they didn't get him down, they actually lifted him up with an harness and that. And I'm not saying that led to this facility being closed, but I think it certainly led to these gates here, as you can see, being placed here. It happened in late evening, so whether or not those two people was doing an illegal climb or not, we don't know, but certainly these gates and this fence I think are an afterthought, because as you can see over there where we had a look before, some of that equipment has found itself on the outside, so I think this was quickly an afterthought. Somebody up at Wigan Council probably feared a big compensation claim, so they thought we'd best get it fenced off. And probably also the emergency services put a bit of pressure on them, because it was a real challenge for them to get in here and get those two people out. So we'll take a look at these now, because I think there's a little sign on this. So a theory that Mrs H has had from her experience of using this type of equipment, you know, with a job, is that probably this was a kind of trail, and that this one here, this square here behind me, would have had like a netting on it. Is it Mrs H was thinking?
I think
bit
so.
like a ship's rigging type of thing that you can climb up. And then probably you made your way along it. This fence wouldn't have been here, and you'd have made your way over to the big one, which may have been a bit of a zip wire or something like that, Mrs H.
It's not high enough, I don't think, but it could have been. Could be for a little.
Well, remember, you've got to remember that, you know, children 8 and above would have been using this, so it wouldn't have been as high thrill as the one over in the park. But mind you, children from 8 and above use that one, don't they? Under supervision, of course.
Yeah.
You know, it looks like this was just a bit of a taster, and then they realised, hey, you know, it's a popular thing, this. Let's do a proper job of it up at Haigh Hall, especially when Contessa's money came through as well.
Yeah.
Because this is just a natural enclave, isn't it, really, that they utilised. Now, I know that this facility here isn't a original or a Gill Swift attraction here at what was Haigh Country Park, but it was put here when this was Haigh Country Park, so it gets in just under the wire, and that's why I'm going to include it. Anyway, we'll have another look inside there, Mrs H.
Mm-hmm.
Now, although we can't actually get in, we can get round the fence here and walk along the edge of it, and we'll have a better look at that rock face by just following the fence line down here. Such a shame we can't get in and have a little look, although from this handle here you can more or less see what all this is about. Once again, a rebranded Haigh Woodland Park sign telling you to keep out no unauthorised access. And There we go. Don't know if you can spot any of those faces with that pareidolia effect that I was talking about. I can't see any. Unfortunately, it'll have been ruined with all those little footholds and handholds that they've put in there. Surprising to think that somebody could fall from that height straight below and survive. I don't really know much about the incident that happened with those two climbers, other than a little postscript on the Bolton Mountaineering Rescue website. With a bit of luck, his injuries didn't prevent him from walking and things like that. We'll make our way down to the end here. We'll be able to see one or two of the handholds closer up. There you go, those aren't natural, those have obviously been put there when they made this into a climbing facility. And that little log there tells me that somebody's been trying to get over that fence. Not me, I hasten to add. Unless you can actually walk in, I won't attempt to get into a place. That's a view looking back down towards the gates. And here's a better handle of one of those pieces of equipment that have just been left abandoned here at Devil's Canyon. From this handle here, it just looks like a set of goalposts. Devil's Canyon, left abandoned. Right, we'll make our way back down this fence line and we'll join up with Mrs H again, and she can go back on camera duties. Like I say, it's still advertised as available for use, whether or not anybody does use it or not.
I don't think so, not with how stuff's growing.
Well, the way the things have grown and that big authoritative keep out sign, and I think there's a big padlock on the gate there, which doesn't look like it's been opened in quite a while, tells you as all this kind of activity now takes place up at Haigh Hall itself. Once they built that, they probably thought there's no need for this. Big old school padlock there. Who has the key to this lock now, I wonder? Now, they used to do archery in there as well. And we have seen archery being done up near the walled garden, so obviously they don't do it down here anymore. Now, a little fun fact for you, Hot Potters, and don't quote me on this, but I'm almost sure I read somewhere that it's still required by law for men to practice archery in this country. It was never repealed. So, if you're above a certain age, I think it was 21, something like that, and you haven't been doing your archery like I haven't, you've been breaking the law all these years and probably don't know about it. Like I say, it's a fun fact that, don't quote me on it, but you should be practising your archery. You should always keep your archery skills, you know, in check, Mrs H.
Yeah, you're going to need those.
Well, yeah, of course. Of course. This is a closer look at it from the other side. As you can see, the ground drops sharply there. So this is as far as I'm going to go. I'm not going to attempt to try and get in there. Little Rosie's managed to go all the way up to the top there. Like a little mountain lion. Or to have that much energy, Hot Potters. Here's another post that's found itself on the outside of that fencing. So that trail that we've been looking at would have stretched quite a way. It would have gone all the way through there, which is way overgrown now. And you can probably just make out the fencing there at the end of those trees. Take a little closer look at this post now. Some big eye bolts through it there. Also, them would have held something substantial, I think. Not so much at the top, they look a little bit lesser gauge than that one. And there once again is that Explorer's Trail with a mobile phone number on it. Wonder if you call that, anyone would answer. There's a tree that's fallen down over the years. As I say on the Haigh Hall website, Haigh Woodland Park website, this is still being advertised for use, but I wouldn't like to think I was using it now. Unfortunately, there's just no way into it, so we can't go and have a little mooch and a check out in there.
I bet Bobsy can find a way in.
Oh, I'm sure little Rosie can. Now, as I said, there's not a lot of information on this, so if anybody out there has climbed this particular rock face, or have even just used this before these gates was put, please leave your comments below, because I'm sort of filling in the blanks with this. There's not a lot of information out there, as I say. Yeah, Rosie's looking like she's trying to find her way in. But no, all this rubbish and that's around here tells me that this hasn't been used in quite a while. So that was a little look at this area. I don't know, it's, I said there's not much to say about it. I don't think it even had a name, it's just known locally as Devil's Canyon. And it does feel a bit eerie in here, doesn't it?
It does.
Well, there's quite a bit of history about the area, and I came up here with little Toby on Saturday, you know, just for a walk. I was looking for something else, and I stumbled across this. So, you know, there was people then still coming up and having a look at it, so it must have been popular at one time or another. Right, Mrs H, I think we'll leave it here, get out of Devil's Canyon and wrap this video up. Well folks, that unfortunately brings us to the end of this particular video. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and a little walk back through the mists of time to when Haigh Woodland Park was Haigh Country Park, and a look at that particular attraction. Maybe you visited it back in the day, or maybe you even worked at it. If so, why not leave your comments below, as I'd love to hear your thoughts. Anyway, we're going to get off now, and we're going to leave Haigh Woodland Park until another day, when we and Mrs H will return to take a look at another attraction from the days of Haigh Country Park. Until then, from myself and from Mrs H, it is bye-bye for now.